everybody. Welcome to the Kimberly Cloud Show. I am your host, Kimberly Cloud. I have a very, very special guest here for the show today. Can you go ahead and announce to the world who you are and where you're calling from?
Hi, my name is Damaris Chanza, and I'm an author, poet, journalist. I'm calling in from New Jersey.
Okay. How's the weather there, by the way? Is it cold yet?
Yeah, it's getting colder. Definitely getting colder, but it's in that weird, like, it's cold in the mornings, warm in the afternoon, and cold again at night.
Bipolar, right?
Yeah,
Okay. Okay. So, can you tell me about your past leading up into your present? You have the floor.
thank you. So pertaining to my writing specifically, I have always loved writing. I can distinctly remember, I have a memory of my mom sitting on the floor with me, and we're at like a coffee table, and she's teaching me how to write my name. So even from that moment of just learning how to spell my own name and write my own name, I loved it. um, so I was I used that, and I was really into reading and writing, and my understanding of how to turn that into a career as a child was becoming an English teacher. So I would tell these stories of when I was an English teacher, I did that and I did this, but I'm only like 5 years old telling these stories. um, and eventually, when I started school, I received praise from my teachers for being ahead of the curve in writing and in reading, and always being like a grade above what my reading level was supposed to be, because I was reading so much at home. I read Charlie in the Chocolate Factory 13 times as a child. Yeah,
Wow.
the book was falling apart. Like, I read
You
it
know,
13 times. I would stay up late reading, and my mom would come into the room and be like, "What are you doing? It's so early. You're doing—" But then at the same time, she's like, "What am I going to do? Stop her from reading?" Like, it's not like I was like playing video games or watching TV. I mean, sometimes I was watching TV, but I would stay up late just to finish a book. So
okay.
those stories and stuff I was always so interested in it. And writing really came into play when I was in middle school, and I remember I was getting bullied, and I just needed a way to express what I wanted to say in a way that just was for me, and was I don't know, special to me. So I started journaling and writing, and I used to walk around with this journal everywhere.
So
And
when
sure.
when you was reading, it takes a lot of perseverance and resilience and courage, to and determination is the key word
Mhm.
to that makes all these together that shows that you were determined to finish that book and have a good, vivid imagination. They say imagine Einstein said imagination is greater than knowledge. So
Mhm.
yeah, you have a huge imagination, and to read that book 13 times, I commend you. So you can continue. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. I mean, definitely. I was explaining this to someone the other day. When I read something, or when I am trying to think of how I want to write something, a lot of people have mentioned how my writing is very, like, there's very vivid imagery. And that's because when I'm thinking about it, I can see it in my head, and not like, oh, I can imagine it, or I can like kind of think about it. No, like as if I were watching TV and it was sitting right in front of me, I can see it in my head, like perfectly laid out. And so when it comes to writing it down, it's just describing what I'm already seeing, what this picture that already has been created in my head.
Okay, and that's basically how a creator creates. They'll
Yeah.
sit up there and have an image, a medium, right? Because that's what mediums do too, right?
Well, it's different for different people. So I know, like, I think it's Pharrell Williams who has, don't quote me on this, but I think the right word is synesthesia, where he sees music as colors.
Wow, I never knew
And I think
that.
like Billie Eilish has it too or something. So everybody sees things in their heads in different ways. And I know some people don't necessarily see like images in their head or anything like that. So it's different for different people.
So take me on a journey to your poetry book and what it entails, and how did you come up with the vision, and what was your purpose in it?
So I started writing my book, Breath of a Fallen Angel, or it didn't have a title for a really long time.
Mhm.
I've always wanted to write one, always, but I never truly had an idea that I could stick with and felt real to me, that I could like follow the story all the way through. Um, but in 2020, the pandemic happened, quarantine, and I was unemployed for the majority of it. um, so I remember I was watching TV, and every TV show that I watched, regardless of whether it was like a comedy or a drama or like a cop show or something, there were these stories of these like domestic violence stories. And in every single one, there's always this person, there's this character who questions it, of like, if they're in this situation, why don't they just leave? They should just leave. Like, they don't have to stay there. And I'm like, they're right. They don't have to stay there, but it's not that easy. It just isn't. And I had that concept in my head, but that wasn't necessarily the the starting concept of the book. A lot of it was just poems that I wrote because I was bored during the pandemic. And there was just nothing to do. So I was just writing things about how I felt. And at the time, I felt sad. I felt scared. I felt
Can
like
you
definitely
give me one of them stories? Can I hear one of your stories? Your
one of the
poetry?
poems.
Yeah, the poems.
Sure. Let's see. There's this one called The Price that I really love. Because I think it kind of really encapsulates what the entire story is about, if I can find it. It's so the book in was inspired by fairy tales. I love fairy tales. I love
Mhm.
Disney and all that. Specifically Snow White. I love it. So I always had this idea of like love as a fairy tale, but the truth of the matter is that that's not the case. So the price was kind of inspired by that concept of like, what if this prince that you thought would come, like in Snow White, she has a song. I think the exact name of the song is like, "One day my prince will come." And I was like, well, what if the prince that came to her was just a villain? And
It's
in the real world, that villain would be somebody who's toxic or whatever. So that's where that concept came from. So this is the price.
okay.
Loving you is a luxury I can no longer afford. Debt too great to continue to ignore. In how many ways do I have to pay? In puffy eyes and tears cried, in blood shed and blouses stained red, in bruises healed and truths concealed, in lies told and empty vows to uphold? The spark we thought was magic grew into a flame we called passion and became a wildfire that couldn't be tamed, burning everything in sight, our love maimed. Where did it all go wrong? Somehow my prince is really a villain in disguise. Who have I become? A twisted perception of love, a guilty vice? Fairy tales did always say that magic came with a price.
I like it. Yeah.
Thank
The
you.
ending was really deep. Magic came with a price. Yeah. And can you correlate internally, what what that poem actually meant even deeper to you? Like, I would love to know, like, what did that poem, because you explained a little bit in the beginning, but I want to know, like, in your own words, extended, what does that poem means?
I think a lot of it, um, for the context of the book, there's this idea of when you surround yourself with certain types of people, those people will influence you. And whether that's good or bad, those people will influence who you become and how you live and what you do. And I think in the situation of the book where this woman is in a toxic relationship and she's so kind of involved in it and she's become isolated because of it from her friends, from her family. She starts off as this good person, right? That's where the idea of an angel comes from Breath of a Fallen Angel. It's just, you're such a good person that you're so angelic. But because she's in this situation, because, you know, she found this quote unquote great love story, she had to pay a price for that magic that she thought was love. And that price was she lost herself. She's no longer this creative person. She's no longer happy. She doesn't, to the point where she doesn't even know that she's lost herself. So I think the price is really about her realizing, like, oh my gosh, what has happened? You know, I thought my life was one thing and suddenly it's a completely different thing and I don't even recognize myself as a person, as a woman. What has happened? And what she thought was love, that was the price of it.
Yeah, like, can you lose yourself through manipulation? Um,
Exactly.
people, there are people that are experts that actually can say that they have classes on ways to make people, gaslight people and make
Yeah.
people think things that's not there. And you know, I hate to say this, but men kind of like have this gift where they you know, some men, that where they are born manipulators. Women have it too,
Yeah.
but like abusive men, they are master manipulators. And they, you know, have you ever been through anything like this before, or
Um,
your friend, you
Me,
know?
not personally to the extent of the book, not at all, thank goodness. And most of the people or most of the women that I've spoken to have gone through maybe something, yeah, but
Mhm.
not necessarily to the kind of extreme extent that it is in the book. But I mean, I have been in situations where, you know, I haven't been felt safe with
Me
the
too.
with because of the men that are around me or the people that are around me, where I felt, you know, physically unsafe or not, it's weird to say mentally unsafe, but almost to the point where you're like, if I talk to that person, if I even go up to that person and say something, something's going to happen. So I'm just not going to say anything. And I'm just going to kind of exclude myself from the situation. So I have been in those types of scenarios, but luckily I've surrounded myself with people who are so like supportive and kind, you know. So I personally have not experienced what is in the book.
And do you feel like that the book symbolizes a universal code for most of the abusees, the women that have been abused? This is a book for them to, you know, look
Yes.
back. Yeah.
So I actually, my sister is, while I was writing this, she was getting her master's in psychology.
That's
And
hard.
yeah, um, I think it was specifically like forensic psychology. Don't quote me. I don't want to anything. But I would ask her a lot of like the grieving process, and what are how would you treat a patient like this? Like, obviously she was only a student. She wasn't working in it or anything like that yet, but she was one of the people that helped me understand, like, I always kind of knew that there is a psychology to being a victim of domestic violence, and it changes how you perceive things and how you process things. But I didn't know any of the official terms or the official process of that, and she helped me understand that. So some of like the book, because it could be argued like, how could I write a book like this if I know nothing about it, right? But I think because it is universal to women in general, of this is something that we have all felt, regardless of what degree, we've all felt it. It can serve as a warning sign of like, if you feel what this woman in the story is feeling, maybe get out of that. And if you're already in it, there's one poem that I haven't released online or anything, but it's called No More. And I wrote that, it was probably the last poem that I wrote for the book. And it was written because I wanted something that could serve as like a mantra, or like almost like an affirmation, that you put it, you read it, and you're telling yourself, no more. I'm not going to deal with this anymore at all. I think it's also one of the longer poems in the book. That it's just, no more dealing with any of your nonsense. And that's a big moment in the narrative of the collection of this. I am not dealing with this anymore.
And this is well said. And this is for, like, I know it is, but it's for all races. Like, you're talking to all women of all colors that
Yes, yes.
been through
I
something.
specifically didn't want to give the woman in the story a name. I didn't want to give her any, specific physical features. I didn't want to really give her anything too specific. What you know about her is her emotions and her feelings. You don't know what she looks like. You don't know what how she was raised or her heritage or any of that. So that way it can stay universal. Even the cover of the book, I specifically asked the cover artist, like, I want it to be a woman, and you can tell that it is, but I don't want her to be any specific race. I don't want her to be anything. Like, I want it to be so universal that it could really truly relate to anybody. Like, I remember I read a book, I think it was by Rupi Kapoor. She's like a very famous poet, and she's I think an Indian poet. I don't want to be wrong, but a lot of her poetry, it comes with her her race and her upbringing, and it's beautiful, and you can still relate to it. A lot of it has things that could be relatable to other races, but then you have to kind of dig past the fact that she's speaking specifically to this one demographic, or the experiences of specifically herself or this one demographic. And I didn't want that. I wanted it to be any poem that you read in this book. It doesn't matter what race, what upbringing, what socioeconomic class, you can fit into this. As long as you are a woman and you have felt like you have been in a similar situation, you can relate to the woman in this book.
Well said, Damaris. So let's kind of take it back a little
Sure.
bit. You said you were bullied, and I want to touch on a subject and wanted to know, how did you get out of being bullied? How did you change your thinking? What happened to where you were like, I refuse to have this continue in my life?
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, a lot of it was in middle school, and kids can just be so mean. Kids just don't understand. None of us understand the full concept of what we're saying or what we're doing or any of that. So a lot of my bullying came from my tone of voice and what I was saying. So I was raised to always be forthright, to always be honest, to you know, you're not going to talk behind somebody's back. You're just going to tell them to their face and they're going to deal with it. But I guess I wasn't always taught that mindset only works in certain situations, or you can
That's
only
how I am.
yeah, or you can only apply it in certain ways to certain people. And I didn't understand that as a child. Now I know that, like, you have that filter of an adult and you only speak to certain people in certain ways or whatever it may be. You're more professional at work and you could be more relaxed at home, but I didn't understand that at the time. So I would go up to people and I would say what I thought, and I wasn't scared to do it.
You had a imagination, and
Yeah,
I understand.
I wasn't scared to tell people that, to tell them to their face. And that just comes off as mean as a child, especially when I didn't always have the right tone when saying things. Um, so it would come off as mean or aggressive, and people would decide, like, you know what, if you're going to talk to us like that and you're going to be like that, then we're not going to talk to you. And we're going to go ahead and tell everybody else that you're mean and spread that rumor. And now suddenly I'm the outcast. And I'm like, I have no idea how this happened, because I swear to you, I was being kind. I felt like I was being kind in telling you this thing. And it was the complete opposite. And I didn't truly understand. I still had friends. I remember in middle school, there was the cafeteria, but there were, like, not cliques. Cliques is a really stereotyped way to say it, but there were these groups of people that they would always sit together. And there was only a limited number of lunch tables. And so because I was not in any of these, I actually ate lunch on the stairwell right outside the cafeteria. Um, and I did that for, like, my entire 7th grade year almost. And the security guard knew I was there. And at first, he would kick me out and tell me, you're supposed to eat lunch in the cafeteria. But then he realized, and I guess he saw the struggle I was having, so he just let me eat there. And I wasn't eating by myself. I had 1 or 2 other people with me. But still, those 2 people were ostracized solely because they weren't my friends. Like, that's how bad it was. Like, other people, because of their association with me, were also ostracized.
But y'all stood strong, right? You still friends with them, right?
I still talk to them to this day.
Oh.
Yeah, I still talk to them to this day. It's been like 15 years or something, I don't know, but we still chat. So, but yeah, it was really like that. And it was easier, even though, like, obviously I could talk to these friends that I had and it was something that they related to. You're still in middle school. I didn't know how to express those feelings of, like, loneliness and sadness, and it's also middle school and you're going through puberty, so everything feels so much more dramatic than it really is. And writing was that outlet that helped me understand what I was going through. And I started carrying around a journal, and I carried it with me everywhere. And I just wrote down anything and everything. I have journals and journals and journals of stuff. that it was like, this was the gossip of today. This was the movie that we watched in class. This is what I'm thinking about. This is a random story that I just made up in my head. Um, and that's
Have
how I kind
you
of, I'm
have
sorry,
you
go ahead.
told the news companies that you have journals? Because maybe they would want to do a story on you or something about,
Oh,
you know.
I've gone back and read through those journals every once in a while. One, they were written in pencil. It's all smudged. It's been years. The pencil doesn't last. And what has lasted, it's just incoherent stuff. None of it really would be that interesting for much of anything. Um, so who knows? Maybe that's something I'll think about in the future if I find something
There was
specific.
there was one lady, she's like she's 100 years old or
Sure.
90s, and since she was like 7 years old, was writing in her journal, and they did a whole, they had like a 30-minute conversation with her, and she showed them journal after journal after journal. She said just what you said, none of it's really interesting, but based on the timeline and based on what was talked about, your interpretations, your vantage points, it has some merit, especially in this days and age. But where do you see yourself going in the future?
I hope to have more books. I hope to work as a full-time writer. That's probably the biggest one, to be a full-time writer in some capacity. Right now, Breath of a Fallen Angel is my first, debut poetry collection, but I've have poems featured in 3 other anthology collections. So there's other poets in them as well. And I freelance as a journalist for a local entertainment blog called NJArts.net, where I interview different artists and like musicians and comedians. But all that is kind of part time. That's what I do when I get home after my 9 to 5. And, officially I work as a copywriter, and it is writing, but it's not the same, right? It's e-commerce copywriting. So a lot of it is like, what are the search terms that I can figure out to make somebody want to buy this product? And, that's not a bad thing. It is fulfilling on days where I'm like, I have 0 ideas on what to write about creatively or whatever. And it is fun. I get to write about like cartoons and stuff sometimes, but it's not long form. It's not poetry. It's not creative in the same way. So it's not always creatively fulfilling. So I think for the future, that's ultimately what I want. I want another, I want more books. I want to just be able to find a space where I can be, you know, financially comfortable, but also creatively fulfilled.
Well said. And you deserve a round of applause for sitting up there creating this initial and taking the first steps at creating a poetry book for domestic violence women. That deserves, to me, a Nobel Peace Prize,
Oh,
because there's so many women out here. Honestly, it's so many women out here that don't know how to get out of their relationships. And all it takes is for a smart reader or a reader to read your poetry, and they will be inspired to want to leave out of that negative situation instead of harness it and stay in that situation.
yeah. I mean, the book isn't a guidebook, it doesn't tell you this is exactly what you need to do to leave your situation. Um, but I think it's just something that's useful in any women going through this, that they can kind of just read it and be like, if you see it in someone else, maybe you recognize it in yourself if you haven't recognized it yet. And also, it could be for people, men or people who haven't experienced this, or anyone else really, to understand why it takes so long and why women who have gone through these situations, they're not not leaving because they don't want to or they can't. It's it's literally a process of identifying that you're in this situation and learning and having the courage to leave it. It's a lot more than just saying I'm going to leave and that's it.
That's true.
Yeah, and I think people just don't understand that. And I think if the book can help people understand that, that's like the ultimate goal, just to kind of build that level of empathy for people that you might not have previously understood.
Well said. And that's something you have. How can the people reach you?
So you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Threads, and TikTok. It's all under the same name. It's at Damaris Chanza. And there's also my personal website. It's damarischanza.com, all super easy. It's all just my name. And there you can find my blog, Discussions with Damaris, I focus on diversity and representation in media and how that works. So you can see my blog post there. There's also more information about my book and about my writing in general. So that's where you can learn more about me.
Okay, I want stay on the line, Damaris. I want to thank everybody for joining my show today. Be safe. See you guys later, and I will see you another time. Bye.
Never waste my time.